You're tuned to Once Upon a Fairy Tale. Welcome to episode 3 of Once Upon a Fairy Tale, the podcast. I didn't think it would happen this soon, but lots has been happening, and so I'm excited to share some new information with you. So here's a review of what to expect in this edition. There are going to be 3 parts. The first part, we talk about the DreamWorks exhibition at the Art Science Museum in Singapore that I visited. In the second part, we have some really exciting musical theater news, mostly related to Disney musicals. And in the third part, we're going to talk about some awesome TV series that are going to be coming up on the ABC network, also Disney owned. Before we begin the podcast proper, I'd just like to say hello. If you're new, my name is Dwayne Tan, and as usual, podcast notes will be available on our Facebook page, which you can visit at www.facebook.com/onceuponafairytaletime. So feel free to pause the podcast and, go through some of these links that I provided to enhance this experience for you. Or if you'd like to wait till after the podcast, that's great too. In any case, I'd like to hear which way you prefer, so drop your feedback and comments on the Facebook page. I'm really curious to know how you experience this podcast as a listener, or if you don't even visit these links at all. Alright, the DreamWorks exhibition started June 13th this year, and it'll go on till September 27th at the Art Science Museum in Singapore. It is the first stop of this one-of-a-kind exhibition, and it's on its 5-year Asian tour. I can't seem to find any more information on which other countries it will go to, but I'm sure that more information will be released once this wraps in Singapore. I must say it was really well done and comprehensive compared to the other exhibits currently in the space. The exhibition has 3 parts to it: character, story, and world. When you first step in, you'll see lots of artwork of character designs on the walls, and you'll also see models and figurines from all the different films they've made so far. There are currently 31 DreamWorks films. Now, they've come a long way since making Ants and Prince of Egypt. I also realized that I've watched every single DreamWorks film except for the recent Home and Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Of course, shortly after, I made sure I watched them both. So now I can say I've watched every single DreamWorks movie. Now, what was interesting though was that when I was in line to get tickets for this exhibition, I overheard people talking about their favorite DreamWorks movies. And they started to list some Pixar and Disney movies, and being a typical nerd, I couldn't help but find it really funny that they thought they were going to see Nemo in the exhibition. I guess they literally kept finding Nemo. Anyway, the second part of the exhibition was about story. Here, we are introduced to the storyboarding process, which are basically still drawings that help animators to create the scene. Aside from short video presentations, there were also multimedia projections onto walls and tables and such that came to life as the visuals kept changing. There were also vector systems that you could play with that control the facial expressions of a character using mathematical equations on the 3D model. You could basically combine how far the eyebrows move and how they move with how wide the eyes open, for example. There was also an ocean waves generator that you could control. It was just nice that they brought some of their technology right up for you to test and play with. In the world section, there was a specially created presentation called Dragon Flight. If you lie on the beanbags on the floor that they provide, it's a really spectacular sight as you fly through the How to Train Your Dragon world. It starts out with a blank page, and then you see how it transforms from just text, creating the world into actual 3D models, and bit by bit, textures and lighting all come into play layer by layer, giving it the final rendered look. Here's what I put together after leaving that experience. Now, animation has its core in believability, and it draws from real life. Animators often study how animals move, they study fire and water, and things like that. So magic happens when it recreates life, and even more by creating worlds that couldn't really exist. And that's amazing, because these environments and situations actually make us reflect on things in a refreshing way. Because it makes us believe in that world, even for just the duration of the movie. It's sometimes underrated because people may have the stereotype that animation is just for kids. We shouldn't forget though that animation is also used in live-action movies to create things that otherwise can't be created visually. And that is why I love all things fairy tale and Disney and video games. You see how it's all related? Alright, let's wrap things up and move on to theater news. We're gonna zoom in onto the Disney Cruise Line shows because there's an original work that's about to premiere. Fans of Tangled, there is now going to be a stage musical version of the movie set to be performed on the Disney Magic cruise ship starting November 11th. Tangled the musical will feature 11 different locations from the world brought to life on stage, and 3 new songs that weren't even in the movie. They are brand new and just for this show. The 3 songs include a new opening number, a new song for Flynn, and a production number for the festival. I was watching some behind-the-scenes footage, and I saw that there was a song called Wanted Man. It's song number 5 in the show, and I believe that it could be possibly the Flynn solo. I hope it's a good one so I can cover it on my YouTube channel. Original composer Ellen Menken continues to write for this show. I actually met the man many years back in New York. I made him sign my book, A Diamond in the Rough, from the Aladdin Collector's DVD set. I found him to be really humble, interested, and sincere. And he's been pretty busy of late. Some upcoming projects include a Mrs. Doubtfire musical, an animated musical called Sausage Party, of which he writes 2 songs for, a bio-musical entitled Happy Trails, and another musical based on a film called Karina Karina. We'll also be talking about a musical series that returns for a 2nd season later in the TV updates portion of our podcast that Alan is involved in as well. Tangled the Musical is not the first that Disney has produced that is original and exclusive to the cruise line. Twice Charmed, which is still playing on the Disney Magic, is one such of my favorites. It's an original twist on the Cinderella story, and it's really well put together with some lovely songs, including a Cinderella solo called Believe in Me. I believe the cast album only sells on the ship, if there's even still stock left. I mean, this has been around for a while now. You can get copies from sellers on Amazon, but the last I looked, it costs $90 or something like that. For your convenience, I've included a list of shows that are playing on the different ships in our podcast notes, including many other things that we talk about here on Once Upon a Fairy Tale, the podcast. The link once again is www.facebook.com/onceuponafairytaletime. Feel free to like our Facebook page so you can be updated each time there's a new podcast. Also, subscribe to us on iTunes and SoundCloud. Now, just 1 or 2 more musicals I wanted to highlight from the Disney Cruise Line. There's also a Toy Story musical on the Disney Wonder, and Aladdin, a musical spectacular. This show is also playing at Disney's California Adventure, but once this closes on January 10th next year, you can only see the show on the Disney Wonder. It's not exactly the same though. Some things may be a little scaled down. For example, the rocks coming down on Aladdin in the Cave of Wonders was really quite wonderfully staged at DCA when I saw it, but on the ship it's not quite as spectacular. I also wonder if Jafar's transformation is different. Of course, this has left many fans disappointed that the show has to say goodbye after 12 years at the Hyperion Theater. And guess what's taking over? It looks like Frozen is set to take over next summer. Within that space of time, I'm suspecting the theater will go through a renovation, hopefully with exciting changes to look forward to. It is the highest grossing animated film of the year, but I personally feel like we've been bombarded by too much of Frozen. And it doesn't stop there. Disney even plans to open Frozen on Broadway as well by 2017. I'm concerned that it will replace the Broadway version of Aladdin. Shortly after Beauty and the Beast celebrated its 10th anniversary on Broadway and closed, Disney hasn't been able to sustain their new musicals. We've seen The Little Mermaid, Newsies, and Mary Poppins open and close since then to much shorter runs. The Hunchback of Notre Dame was trying to find its way to Broadway, but after a version in Florida, then California, it stopped short of the Great White Way at the Paper Mill Playhouse in New Jersey. I had been looking forward to an English version of this musical since the German one was staged in 1999. If I had known it wouldn't make it to Broadway, I would have flown earlier to catch a version of it. I heard that Michael Arden was really good as Quasimodo. You can actually check out a clip of him singing Out There on YouTube. It's amazing. So the only Disney show surviving is really The Lion King, which is still running. It's now the 4th longest running show on Broadway since it opened in 1997, grossing more than $1 billion. Back to Frozen on Broadway. While the cruise version will stay true to the film, the Broadway version will take more liberties. Now this next bit is really exciting news for me, and I'm sure for many Frozen fans. This will include about 12 new songs written by the same team, comprising Robert and Kristen Anderson Lopez. I wonder if some of these new songs will also appear in Frozen 2 that Disney is also planning. For more information on the Disney movie lineup till 2019, you can listen to our first podcast of Once Upon a Fairy Tale. Speaking of differences between versions, here's a little bit of trivia for you about Aladdin. The park and cruise ship version has an exclusive song that Jasmine sings called To Be Free. In the original Broadway tryouts in Seattle, that part of the story arc had a different song written. It was titled Call Me a Princess. This was a cut song from the original movie, and for the same reason it was taken out, because it didn't quite fit the feel of Jasmine and the rest of the songs, this song was replaced by a new song for the Broadway version, and it's called These Palace Walls. But interestingly enough, the merchandise had been made, so you can actually buy Call Me a Princess t-shirts still at the theater. In other news, the Mary Poppins UK tour begins October 12th. No promises, but possibly for an upcoming podcast, I might try to arrange for an interview with Anthony Drew, who is the new lyricist for the musical, and also a friend of mine who has worked and created lots for the Singapore theater scene. The Tony-winning team behind Once the Musical are also working on a musical adaptation of Pinocchio. Just like Mary Poppins, this is seemingly going to be an original of sorts in that it will combine portions of the novel by Carlo Collodi and the 1940 Disney film. Songs will include familiar favorites like Give a Little Whistle, I've Got No Strings, and When You Wish Upon a Star, as well as other songs written for the film but never used. There's no word if any original music will be composed for this version. Much of the same material, it seems, will also go into the live-action movie that Disney is making. A workshop and reading will take place later this year in the UK, and if all goes well, there will be a full-scale premiere at the National Theatre come Christmas 2016. Here's great news for Princess Bride fans. According to Carrie Elwes, who played the lead in the film, the Disney theatrical group is planning for a musical adaptation. Not much else is known at this point, except that Disney did make an attempt before and plans fell through. Last piece of news on the musical front, Disney also plans to mount a Broadway show based on Jim Henson's The Muppets. The speculation is that it will be based on the 1984 film The Muppets Take Manhattan, and will feature familiar characters like Kermit, Miss Piggy, Gonzo, and perhaps even the same cameos from Big Bird, Bert, and Ernie. This leads me right into the TV portion of our podcast, also the last portion. The Muppets is going to have a new TV series on ABC. This highly anticipated show will premiere on September 22nd. What's different about this series is that it's a documentary style, exploring the Muppets' personal lives and relationships at home and at work, as well as romances, breakups, disappointments, wants, and desires. This explains all the publicity about Miss Piggy and Kermit's recent breakup. Believe it or not, it's news on the tabloid front. While Kermit has a new pig girlfriend named Denise, did you hear that Miss Piggy has now moved on to Josh Groban? No, seriously, her new boy toy will be starring in the second episode. I'm excited to catch this already. And then comes September 27th. Once Upon a Time returns for its 5th season. Not much was said by the developers and the cast at the D23 Expo about Season 5 because it would involve spoilers, but if you enjoy spoilers, I provided a link in the podcast notes where you can find 3 video sneaks of the new season. Here's what we do know and can say without spoiling things. Once Upon a Time will shift to Camelot, where a lot of the new action will be happening. We will also see Pixar's first character to ever be introduced to the series. Merida from Pixar's Brave will join the cast. Red Riding Hood also returns to the series. Now, I've always kind of liked her story arc. If you are new to the series, here's a little introduction. It basically starts when the evil queen from Snow White curses the fairy tale community and traps them in a current-day town called Storybrooke. And this is all live action as opposed to animation. What's really cool is that Disney owns the ABC network, so many of the other Disney worlds can coexist in this series, making this one of the only places you can see some of your favorite characters interact. There are many references for Disney fans and also very cool backstories and new stories developed of and for these characters. DVD sets and downloads are available for catch-up from various websites. Also, the Season 4 DVD was just released August 18th, and as with tradition, there is a blooper bonus feature which you can also find on YouTube. Once Upon a Fairy Tale has provided that link on our podcast notes. If you're interested in other Once Upon a Time related media, there is also a spin-off series called Once Upon a Time in Wonderland. I really enjoyed this series, but it got cancelled after its first season. It features characters like Alice, of course, the Red Queen, and the Genie and Jafar from Aladdin. Disney-owned Hyperion Books published Reawakened by Odette Bean, a novelization of storylines from the first season, expanded to include new perspectives. The narrative is from the points of view of Emma Swan in Storybrooke and Snow White in the Enchanted Forest. The novel was published 2013, so I'm guessing by now there will not be any follow-ups. It's available in paperback and ebook formats. A comic book titled Once Upon a Time, Shadow of the Queen was released the same year. It details what happens after the evil queen takes the huntsman's heart, forcing him to commit evil and try to capture Snow White again. The huntsman faces his past and also meets Red Riding Hood, who is trying to cope with her beastly alter ego. Together, they team up and try to save Snow White before it is all too late. Unlike the book series, they released a sequel to the first comic book in 2014 called Once Upon a Time, Out of the Past. Some trivia for you. Incidentally, the Huntsman in Once Upon a Time was played by Jamie Dornan, who is now known for the 50 Shades of Grey movie series. Before we wrap up, one last series to mention. I always love it when it's got songs, and this one does. It's a musical series, also by ABC. Galavant will return for its second season on May 7th next year. It made its debut as a mid-season fill-in for Once Upon a Time. As I mentioned earlier, this is the project Ellen Menken is also working on with Glenn Slater. The story follows the dashing knight Galavant, who falls out of luck, but is determined to reclaim his reputation and happy ever after. Even though it's got a medieval setting, Galavant is very different to the Once Upon a Time series because it's more of a comedy. However, it does veer towards sexual jokes and toilet humor. Nonetheless refreshing, as we've not seen Menken and Slater produce such songs. Okay, this has been heaps fun putting together. I'd love to hear your comments on the Facebook page. Please follow us and subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Twitter. The official Twitter account is Disney Dwayne. I've also just received my Disney Infinity 3 starter pack with the Inside Out playset, so for now I'm going to have to say over and out. If you happen to be playing on the Wii U, my username is DisneyLad. Add me on MeUniverse or Disney Infinity website as a friend. Till the next one, this is Dwayne Tan for Once Upon a Fairy Tale, the podcast. Thanks for listening.